Okay, we're on page 159. And the Maimon is in the process of explaining why is it important to make a vessel in Derech HaTeva. And the answer is, after everything he explained before, that it's not enough that Hashem just gives us chesed, because Hashem's chesed, his kindness, is something very, very spiritual. And this kindness in Atzilus, this chesed in Bria, chesed in Yitzira, and in all these levels, the chesed takes on a spiritual form. And we're davening and we're asking Hashem, we who live in this physical world, we want the chesed to be translated into physical benefits, to have food and life and sustenance and all the things we need. In order for that to happen, spiritually, the spiritual light has to go through a very intense process of tzimtzum, that from the spiritual, it should be transformed into physical. What does tzimtzum mean? What's the definition of tzimtzum? That light is hidden. This is the way the light is hidden. The vessel we set up in the natural order, that's the tzimtzum. The fact that the light of Hashem, it comes to us in a way that it's totally hidden. We can't see that it's light of Hashem. And how is it hidden? Because it's happening in a way that is understood to be something natural. We don't see that Hashem is behind it. So, continuing with that, we're on page 159. And we're going to start with the fourth line from the top. In other words, what he said before was the fact that it's so hidden that I could think, and without really being taught, I definitely will think that whatever happens is because of me, because of what I did. That's exactly the whole purpose of it. Hashem wants it to be in such a way that it could be understood and interpreted as my own doings. That's when it's really considered hidden, and then Hashem's bracha could come. And the intent in this, that Hashem wants things hidden in such a way, is very, very deep. It comes as a result of his attribute of Gevura, which is lahalim ulahastir chayis alaki, to conceal and hide Hashem's divine light. As it's explained in Tanya, in the second volume of Tanya, which is called Shari Yichud V'Amunah, this is the hidden secret in what our sages say, Mitchila olah b'machshava livrei solim amidas adin. At first, Hashem wanted to create the world with midas adin, which is the attribute of judgment. And because he saw that the world won't be able to last in such a way, it's too intense, so Hashem decided to also blend in midas harachamim. Before I say the words inside, let me go over this. And I think this also came up before. And that is that if you look at the Medrash on the surface, there's a big question there. The Medrash says, if you look in the Chumash, it starts off Bereshis bara Elokim. Then it says, Vayomer Elokim, let there be light. And Elokim said, let there be this. And Elokim said, let there be that. Why does it say Elokim? It's Hashem creating the world, which means he's extending himself, extending his kindness. He's creating. Why is it the name Elokim? It should be the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Hashem shining his light, not Hashem concealing his light. In fact, it says that the whole part of creation has only the name Elokim, only that name. 32 times we'll see the name Elokim. All the way at the end, it says, this is Hashem looked at the world that he created, and over there it says, who created Hashem Elokim, and uses both names. So the Medrash says, because initially Hashem wanted to create the world with the attribute of Gevura, of judgment, of severity. But because he saw that if he does that, the world wouldn't be able to last. It would be too much judgment. So Hashem also added and sort of blended in the attribute of Rachamim. And there's a mashal that the Medrash gives with a king or someone that had glasses, and he wanted to put liquid into the glasses. And he said, if I put in hot, very hot liquid, the glass will break. If I put in liquid that's cold, put in juice or wine that's cold, then it gets stuck to the glass and the glass won't be clean. So what did he do? He mixed the hot and the cold, and then it wasn't that hot that it would break, and it wasn't that cold that it got stuck. So he had both advantages. That's how Hashem said, if I create the world with the attribute of judgment, and for every little thing people will be judged in a very serious way, a very extreme way, nobody would last. Everybody would be judged and nobody would last. If I create the world in a way with all chesed, just forgiving and forgetting and letting everybody get away with everything, it won't be clean. People will do averos because there's no consequences. So what did he do? He made a partnership. On that hand, we can understand the Medrash. But the one part which is really sort of shocking is that initially Hashem wanted to create the world with the attribute of judgment. But because he saw that judgment alone is too strong, he added, sort of diluted it with chesed. It should have been the opposite. Hashem is not about punishing. Hashem is about giving chesed. It should have been. Initially, he wanted to create the world with chesed. Because he saw that too much chesed, people would take advantage because there are no consequences, he had to also dilute it with Gemura, not the reverse. Did I speak about it in this class? Do you remember it? If I spoke and you don't remember, it's also fine. Okay, so what was the answer? Do you remember, Miriam?
No, I was listening. I don't think you spoke in the class.
No? Okay. So the answer is, it means like this. Hashem is infinite. Infinite in a way that it's beyond our understanding. We can't even begin to describe what real, true, absolute infinity is, as we spoke about this in the Maimer class. So before Hashem, the first thing that's necessary for creation is tzimtzum. That's the first step. For Hashem to conceal his infinite light and to create a finite world. And that's what it means that initially, this is the initial thing, to create the world with tzimtzum. Because Hashem wants a physical world and a dwelling place in a physical world, a world that has godliness hidden. So for that to happen, he has to hide his light, conceal his light. So that's why the initial thing is Gevura. However, if he hides his light in a very, very extreme way, then how are we going to be able to serve him? It's all hidden. We won't be able to feel and sense and really have the true connection to Hashem. So he has to also reveal a little bit of his light. And that's why it starts off with Gvura, and then Hashem dilutes it with Chesed. What does Chesed mean? Not just kindness. Chesed means Hashem did certain things where he revealed his light, that we should be able to see more openly Hashem's presence. Because if the world would be totally hidden, look how Hashem created the world. He created the world in such a way, number one, we don't see that he's the creator. Number two, you study science and different parts of science. There's actually proof that he wasn't the creator. It came about in some sort of natural way. So that means he's hidden. If it would be only that, we'd never be able to really connect. So Hashem did other things which reveals his presence. And that's basically when things happen that are miraculous. When Hashem performs a miracle, like the stories in Chumash, or the miracles that happen through the great tzaddikim throughout the ages, these are the places and the times where Hashem reveals his light. So there's a balance here between chesed and gvura, meaning revealing and concealing. So let's say the words inside. Again, shazehu soy, this is the mystic secret implied by our sages when they said, mitchila, at the outset, what came to Hashem's thought was to create the world with the attribute of gevura, din, stern judgment. What does that mean? Not judgment to punish us. It means halavushim v'asteris. Hashem wanted to create the world with garments and concealment. And by the way, it doesn't mean wanted, then he changed his mind. It means, it's not chronological. It means this is initially what needs to be happening. Hashem saw that the world could not continue that way. Shitavi midas rachmi. He blended it with the attribute of mercy, which is what's mercy? Is galus alakus, the revelation of godliness through Isus and Mevsia Torah, through the wonders and the miracles that are found in the Torah. Page 158. V'chein yechidim usridim, also through select individuals, which are the great tzaddikim, asher Hashem koira aleihem, that Hashem calls to them, which means they're people that have a unique relationship with Hashem, and Achreim Tzaddikei Elyon, and also in the later generations, all the great tzaddikim, that through them Hashem performs miracles, and through these miracles His presence is revealed. So this goes back to, this is the reason why we need to do everything in Derech HaTeva. You need to go to the doctor, you need to do the business, you have to have a strong army, you do everything in Derech HaTeva, because otherwise there's no garment that's concealing the light of Hashem. So even if the light of Hashem is meant to come to me and give me the bracha, I can't get it unless it's channeled through the keli, and that's my responsibility. I have to provide that vessel. So now, going back to what I said yesterday, and I just thought of an interesting observation which helps us see it more clearly. We know the world today is a changed world. Anybody who would get up from his grave from 100 or 150 years ago would be absolutely stunned, would be dizzy from everything that's going on, all the technology we have. It just would be beyond anything they could imagine. It's pashut, a new world. You can't compare. It's like two different worlds. All this came about through different inventions and discoveries. So let's look at for a moment, okay, we have to thank Benjamin Franklin. He invented electricity. We have to thank Graham Bell. He created or discovered or invented the telephone. And we have to thank the Wright brothers. They thought of the flying of airplanes. And these are the things, amongst many others, that changed the world completely. But you all know, we learned it in different classes. I'm sure it came up. I taught it in the Mashiach class, that the Zohar writes, which was written 1,800 years ago, that there's going to come a time that we're going to see new wisdom of the world that was never known before. And when is that time? It's going to start around about 1800. That's what the Zohar gives that number, 5,000 and 5,600, which in our counting corresponds to the English 1,800. So that means it's already been set up before. So what did Bell do, and what did Benjamin Franklin do, and what did everybody else do? It means like this. Hashem decided that in this time of history, these wisdoms will be revealed in the world. And then Hashem chose this person, put the idea in his head, and he is one who discovered it and invented electricity, phone, whatever it is. But it's clear, the plan was already there 1,800 years ago. So of course the man is brilliant. That means he is the proper vessel, that it happened in a natural order, and you're not associating with Hashem. He discovered some of the amazing powers that exist within nature. But if you look in the Zohar, it says, no, this was already designated before. So at this time, Hashem chose him, which means to put this idea in his head. So the same with everything else. Like I said yesterday, if you see someone like Amazon who became a multi-billionaire and he's brilliant, his ideas of what he did, that's not what it is. Hashem wanted, for whatever reason known to him, that this person should be a multi-billionaire and that the world should have all the benefits that we have today. So Hashem put these ideas into his head, and Hashem put different ideas into Bill Gates' head and different ideas in someone else's head. So even though it looks like it's purely Derech HaTeva, and this guy is smart, if not for him, nothing would have happened, but really it's coming from a higher place, but it's being channeled in the natural order. So forget about all these other people. I have to apply that to myself. That when I am going to work or doing business and I'm making money or losing money, I realize it's all from Hashem. And all the things that are the natural reasons why I made money or why I lost money, it's all from Hashem. They're just excuses that the light of Hashem is going to be hidden. But in essence, it's all coming from Hashem. And if a person has that attitude and really sees it with clarity, they have a much more calm life, much more relaxed life. All the things that start with the word would've and could've and should've are out the window because I realize it's all hashgacha pratis. And then we see everything in a totally different way. Now he's going to explain that to a certain extent, on a certain sort of on a finer level, if a person doesn't recognize that, it's a certain form of avodah zarah. It's like idol worship, because I'm sort of relying on nature, not on Hashem. I'm putting my trust in nature. I'm not putting my trust in Hashem. I'm thinking that nature is independently doing something for me, not Hashem. So again, the general idea, I think we always learn about it. What's unique in this mimer is the understanding, why does everything have to go through the natural order? Is because it has to be hidden that this is Hashem's light. And the only way it's hidden is through the natural order. Being that we're still under the influence of the Mittel Rebbe, I wanted to bring out something which is also related to this class. In the back of the booklet that you saw yesterday, there's a list of books that the Mittel Rebbe wrote. And it's known that except for 2 Sfarim, all the Sfarim that he wrote were sort of designated or designed for a specific chassid. There's one sefer in the back, you'll see it says, it's called Imre Bina. And that was written, that's considered the deepest sefer of Chassidus that exists. And that was written for a specific chassid. His name was Rabbi Kosil Lepler. And he actually didn't have such a good head. And it's a long story, but now is not the time for that, of how he was so upset that he didn't have the understanding of the Maimer, of the Chassidus, the way the young men had, and how he worked so hard, and eventually he just sort of developed his brain, and he became the deepest mind of Chassidus. And this book, which is the deepest sefer of Chassidus, was written for him. So there's another sefer, which I brought with me to show you. It's called Pakei Chibrim, a little, small, little booklet. And what is it? It's written in Yiddish, which is very unusual. All the Maimarim of the Rebbe are in English, and in Hebrew. It's written in Yiddish. And the reason why it was, what?
They're set in Yiddish, though.
They're set in Yiddish, but when they're written in Hebrew, right? It's interesting. You should know there are other Chassidic Rebbes that when they say words of Torah on Shabbos, they say it in Hebrew. Not the Israeli Hebrew, but like the biblical kind of Hebrew, Dafka. But the Baal Shem Tov and the Chabad Rebbeim made a point Dafka to say it in Yiddish, but writing, they used to write it in English. And here we go again. Okay, listen, it was Thanksgiving yesterday, so we have to give some compliments to our country. So there's an amazing story behind this. It's a long story. This is a beautiful Malav Malka story. You can sit and listen to it with all its details. I want to give the general story, which is, it's a similar idea to what we're talking about. So I'm going to skip a lot of the little details and just give the general story. It's about a chassid. The Friedrich Rebbe heard the story from this chassid's son. And he asked him to tell him all the details about his father, because that chassid, he's connected to this book. The book was written for someone specific, and here's the story, why he wrote the book and why he wrote it in Yiddish, and who's that person, what's the history behind it. So his father was a very big chassid. He was, his name was Rabbi Yosef, and he was in a city called Beshnekovitz. He was a big mashpia. He had vast knowledge of Gemara, vast knowledge of Chassidus. He would daven for hours, like a real chassid. He personified what Chassidus is all about. And it talks about how he became a chassid, because initially he wasn't a chassid, how he became a chassid. And then it writes that, unfortunately, his wife had passed away, and he came to the Alter Rebbe. He was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe asked him, do you know the 6 volumes of Mishnayos by heart? I want you to realize 6 volumes of Mishnayos by heart is thousands of pages. He said, yeah, he knows them. He knows them perfect. So, and he actually has a seder, and that is that once a month he goes through the whole thing by heart. So he remembers it well. So the Alter Rebbe said the word Mishnah are the same letters as the word Neshama. And he said to him, after all his wife had passed away, He said, you will soon marry a woman, a younger woman, which you'll have children with her, or you'll have a child with, or you'll have a son with her, and you'll live for many years together. But for the benefit of your neshama, don't become a rav. You should rather become a wagon driver. So he came home, and shortly after he came home, someone suggested a shidduch with this woman who was a younger woman. She lost her husband. And he understood this is what the Alter Rebbe must have been referring to. And they got married. And this person, the Free Rebbe was talking to, that's the son that was born from this marriage, an open prophecy from the Alter Rebbe. 10 years later, a delegation came from a very prominent place, very important city. And they said that the whole city, all the members of the community are offering him a position. He should become the Rav of the community. And he was deserving of such a position. And then he remembered, the Alter Rebbe said, don't become a Rav. So he said, no. But then he said, the Alter Rebbe said, rather, for the benefit of your neshama, become a wagon driver. And that hit him like a bolt of lightning. Wagon driver. It's hard for us to understand, but in those days, a wagon driver was probably considered the lowest class that you can possibly be. And he's a Rav, and he's a mashpia, he's the head of a community, he has hundreds of students. To become a wagon driver is like humiliating, it's embarrassing. But that's what the Alter Rebbe said. So he was thinking about it, should I not? And he was really very, very confused. And finally he said, what the Alter Rebbe said, that don't take the position of Rav, instead take the position of wagon driver for the benefit of your neshama. Now must be the time. It was an open prophecy that they're going to offer me a position of a Rav 10 years ago. So he finally went to the place where the wagon drivers are, the depot. And of course, they all ran over to him. Rabbi, where do you want to go? I'm ready to take you. This guy said, I'll take you. He says, no, actually, I didn't come to go anywhere. I want you to teach me how to be a wagon driver. They all started laughing. Nice joke. One of the wagon drivers says, this Rabbi Yosef, he doesn't make jokes like that. He must be serious. Come with me, and I'll show you how to be a wagon driver. Takes him, shows him how to hook up the horses to the wagon and how to put the grease on the wagons and other things. Of course, he wasn't used to this kind of work. He got all smeared up with grease from head to toe. One of the horses swished his tail and he almost lost his eye. And he was broken physically and emotionally, thinking, I'm going to become a wagon driver. But he had to go to shul, he had to go give a shir. He went to shul, and someone walked over to him and said, Rabbi, I heard you went to the place to ask them to show you how to be a wagon driver. What does that mean? He didn't answer. He walked home, he had a big lump in his throat, and he just was broken to pieces. He comes home, he sees his wife is crying, and he realizes she probably heard the news already, and probably they're saying that he became senile. He was, I think, 70 years old at the time. So he went into his room and he was crying. She was at her place, her crying. And he just couldn't believe it, that he should become a wagon driver at this age. And then he decided, something came to his head. The Gemara says, if a man doesn't know what he should do, he should consult with his wife. So I'll actually consult with her. I'll tell her the whole truth. And he called her and he told her this. She was, this little boy. She was rocking the baby. Her face was wet with tears. And he said to her, I have something to share with you. And he told her the story with the Alter Rebbe. And she said, what? The Alter Rebbe told you to become a wagon driver? What's the question? Of course you become a wagon driver. In fact, I'll sell my jewelry, I'll give you the money, and you're able to ride a wagon and a horse. There was not even a question in her mind. And he said, on one hand, he was like so moved by the fact that her emunah was so simple. For every woman wants a life of dignity and wants a life of honor. Her husband is this prominent, honorable rabbi. Here's become a wagon driver. She has no issues. That's what the Alter Rebbe said. On the other hand, it just brought the message home that he really has to become a wagon driver. And then again, he broke down crying. I just can't see it happening.
And Alter Rebbe was already next door?
Yeah, the Alter Rebbe was already, it was 10 years later, Alter Rebbe was no longer here. Of course, thoughts started to come to him and said, it's actually embarrassing. My wife, her emunah is so pure. Didn't even blink or it was nothing, not even a thought. Immediately, of course. And by me, I'm having all these issues. And he couldn't get it out of his head, back and forth. Yes, one day he's thinking yes, one day he's thinking no. And then suddenly a thought occurred to him that there's a chassid whose name was Chaim Yeshua, and he was a wagon driver. And this chassid was also someone who knew the whole Mishnayos by heart. Everybody knew that he was a master of halacha, a great Torah scholar, a big chassid, and he's a wagon driver. So I guess you could have the two worlds together. Let me go to him and ask him how he worked this out. So he went to him. First, he couldn't find him. He had to travel to another city. And he met with him. He says, I want to ask you a question. I'm considering to become a wagon driver. Could you help me? And the other chassid's mouth nearly fell. And he looked at him like, he couldn't believe it. He realized that his friend, the chassid, must have lost his mind. And then he starts crying. So he says to him, why are you crying? Who's forcing you to become a wagon driver? What kind of a shagaz got into your head? Why do you want to become a wagon driver at this age? All the years you've been learning and davening and teaching and nigla, chassidus, wagon driver? So he stood up. In those days when a chassid would repeat something that the Rebbe told him, he would stand up. And he told him the story with the Alter Rebbe, with the Yichidus. And of course, his reaction was to say, if that's the case, then why are you crying? You should be b'simcha. The Alter Rebbe told you that for the shlichus of your neshama, this is what you should be doing. So he said, yeah, but do I actually have to become a wagon driver? Maybe it means I can, for example, give you money and you'll be a wagon driver and you'll be mighty me, like it'll be as if I'm a wagon driver. He says, no, that's not what the Alter Rebbe said. The Alter Rebbe said, don't take the position of being a Rav, take the position of being a wagon driver. It means just literally a wagon driver. Anyway, he finally got him to do that. And he became a wagon driver. And he got used to his way. And then an incident happened that he was traveling somewhere. He was actually delivering merchandise, not people. Came to an inn. And in that inn, he found out that the nobleman of the whole area was staying in the inn. But somehow the priests found out that he's there. They came to ask him to visit their community. So they all left, him and his whole entourage. But one of the people that was from his group stayed there. And the innkeeper introduced him to this man. And he said, I want to go somewhere tomorrow. Can I make up with you to take me? You know, he'll be the wagon driver. So he said, yeah. What time? So Rabbi Yosef answered, they spoke Yiddish, by the way, even though this guy was not religious. He says, after davening. So he says again, with an edge in his words, what time are we going? So he looks to him and he says, after davening. And he said, I don't care whether you do daven or you don't daven. I just want to know what time. I want to get up from my sleep. I want to take a shower, drink something, and eat something. He finishes the sentence, and daven. And says, the davening I'll leave to you. He says, how could you not daven? How could you not put on film? It's a mitzvah, a yid. He got very upset. And he said to the innkeeper, just wake me up before, when he's ready to leave, a half an hour before. So the innkeeper said, I want you to know, he davens for quite some time. It's going to be a while. So says, forget it. Get me a different wagon driver. I'm not going with this guy. Okay. And he goes to his room. Just wake me up 5 a.m, make it up, and I'll pay this wagon driver. Anyway, in the middle of the night, this Rabbi Yosef, he would do Tikkun Chatzos. He would get up at midnight and daven about the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And when he was a big chassid, he was very emotional, he was crying a lot, and that woke up this man next door. He got out of bed to see what's going on, and he sees him sitting on the floor, and how he's davening and crying, and something triggered, where he began to remember his family. He remembered his father and his mother, and his family. To make a long story short, what happened was that he actually grew up with not only a frum family, but a Chassidic family. And his father was also someone who davened like this, with a lot of emotion and a lot of fire. And he was a student of a very big chassid. And he became friends with some non-Jewish guys. And eventually he drifted away from the path of Torah. He was already married. He was married with a woman. They had 2 children. And he just abandoned them, disappeared, married a non-Jewish woman, had a child with her, and he left them behind, just forgot about his whole past. And he married someone who was the son-in-law of the nobleman, high position. So he got a position where he was the sort of main secretary of this nobleman, a very important position, private secretary. And naturally, he was very far from Yiddishkeit, totally. And he was thinking about his life. He started to remember his father and his mother and the davening, his wife and his children. They're actually so nice to him. There's really nothing wrong. He left them behind. He started to think about the embarrassment and the shame that he must have had. And his wife, she didn't do anything to deserve this. And he started to become sick just from aggravation. And it turns out that he became so sick that he became got high fever. Then he became delirious. They called one doctor and another doctor, and the nobleman he worked for sent the biggest doctors from Vitebsk to come. And there was a time that he was unconscious. Then there was time he was conscious again. And then this chassid realized that it's all because of him, and he actually asked the innkeeper to borrow him his talis and tefillin he wants to daven. And he spoke to him, and eventually he became about tshuva. A lot of details, just too long to go into. It became about tshuva. And he guided him how to go on with his life, and they left. And this was the time, like Adina said, the Alter Rebbe already was nostalgic. And he never went yet to visit the Mittel Rebbe. So for the first time, he went to Lubavitch to see the Mittel Rebbe. I don't know how much longer that was. It was a half a year later, a year later. He comes to Lubavitch. Who does he bump into? This person. His name was Solomon, and now his name was Shlomo Leib. And what are you doing here? He says somehow he got guided to come to the Lubavitch, to the Mittel Rebbe, who gave him a path how to do tshuva. And he realized that his tshuva was really sincere and permanent. So the Mittel Rebbe wrote this book of how a person could do proper tshuva. But it's not for us today, if you read it. It's more about fasting and the things that applied in those days, not nowadays. But in the meantime, this chassid came to the Mittel Rebbe for the first time. So the Mittel Rebbe said to him, my father told me that you can go back to become a mashpia in your city.
Wow. In a dream?
What?
In a dream? Or?
Can't reveal everything.
Oh,
Either a dream, or he met him in person, right? Or he saw his father in person. The Alter Rebbe, and he said to the chassid, my father took him a shpiyah and he turned him into a wagon driver for the benefit of saving the life of one yid. And I am taking a wagon driver and turning him into a mashpiyah. So basically, this is what the Alter Rebbe meant for the benefit of your neshama. Why am I saying it's connected to here? The Alter Rebbe said for the benefit. Think of what happened. These are two people that don't know each other, but the Alter Rebbe knew and saw that here's a neshama that's lost, and here's a neshama that's in a very good place, and Hashem designated that this neshama is supposed to light up that neshama. And the only way for this we don't understand. So why couldn't the Alter Rebbe say, please go to this city, knock on this guy's door, hit him over the head, and tell him to become a Baal Tshuva? Didn't work like that. He became, for years, he was a wagon driver. Had to be in a totally natural order. He was a wagon driver. He ended up picking him up, and then one thing led to another, and eventually he became a Baal Tshuva. But clearly this was designated in Shemayim way before, and that's what he told him. It's for the benefit of both. As a result of that, this person became a Baal Tshuva, but apparently this was part of his shlichus, why his neshama came down to this world, to elevate that neshama. So therefore he said, this is for the benefit of your neshama.
Why is it a low job, like to be a wagon driver? Like, I feel like it's so clear that like you meet people on the way and that you would piss one up on the way. Like, it just makes it's like.
I can't explain it because I didn't live in those days. I'm a little bit older, but I wasn't in the days of wagon drivers. And I guess this is just the way it was in those days. A wagon driver was simple people, coarse people, not the higher class people of the community.
Like Alter Rebbe said it, like I don't know why he wouldn't see it from a different perspective,
Well, that's another whole thing we can learn from this about the power of Amunah. I mean, it says here that through his thoughts, he started to think that what am I really worried about? It's all about me and about my image of myself. It's not real, but why am I so worried? Alter Rebbe said. But I guess we don't understand what it meant, what kind of change, life-changing thing this would have been to become from a mashpia to a wagon driver, I can't think of anything. I don't know what I would compare it to, but it would be such a life-changing thing that it just didn't register in his head. For her, even though she also understood it, but he brought out the point that he was raised without Chassidus. She was raised with Chassidus. He said to himself, I learned Chassidus for years. I was by the Alter Rebbe. Women those days didn't have what they have today, Sichas and Maimarim and Tanya. They didn't learn all these things. But nevertheless, the emunah that she had in her Rebbe, which came as a result of her education, was so pure and so powerful that she had no doubt that this was the best thing for him to do, because Alter Rebbe said so, and then we should do it b'simcha. And by him, it was more like he was thinking about intellectually, trying to it should make sense, it should sit well with him, and intellectually it just didn't register, it didn't resonate, it just didn't fit in. So maybe Alter Rebbe meant I should just pay money for a different wagon driver, everything, but he just couldn't get to it. Finally, he broke through. But that was the difference between the two of them. So now let's look into this piece where he talks about a person doesn't have this, it's to some extent on a finer level, it's like Avodah Zarah. So we're on page 158. This is the third line. This is reflecting the words of the Arizal. It says, Tzav is Bnei Yisrael, command the Jewish people to bring this sacrifice or that sacrifice, or to do this or to do that. So the Alter Rebbe, the Arizal writes, Tzav is B'gematria 96. And these are two names of Hashem. One is Kael, and one is the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Kael is 31. And Aleph Daled Nun Yud is what? Is 65. 65 and 31 is 96. But it's known what our sages say, Ain't Tzav al Avodah Zarah. That Tzav is related to Avodah Zarah, idolatry. So that's shocking. But it means that the Avodah Zarah, it gets its nurture from these two names of Hashem. Because we know that everything comes from Kedusha. But according to the Arizal, when we say the Parsha, Tzav es Bnei Yisrael, this has a power to sort of weaken the power of Avodah Zarah. L'chari Yipela, but on the surface, this is really shocking. Ma inyan Avodah Zarah l'Shem Keil Adnai. How could you connect Avodah Zarah to a name of Hashem, Keil Adnai? This is the name of Hashem that mainly rules in the world of Asiyah, in our world. It's through this name that the Chayis of Hashem, which is Ein Sof, is transmitted to the physical world here. And the influence that's drawn down into the world of Asiyah has to clothe itself in a coarse, thick garment, until it should appear as if the world is following its own independent pattern, which is the pattern of nature. And that's Avodah Zarah. To a certain extent, this is denying godliness. To say that I am the one that's responsible for everything. It's my strength and my power that made this happen, which means the I believe that Hashem is the creator, Hashem is the God of all gods, but there are other gods that are running this world. Hashem is the God of all gods. This is also one of the things that describe about the Zohar. But it's not only people who say, I don't believe in God, an atheist, but there are people that they believe in God, but they say that Hashem created sort of gods that are in charge of different things in this world, like a king who designates ministers to run different parts of the country, and they run it independently. Or a head of a company that has 300 branches, he designates a manager for each branch, and they run it independently to a certain extent. So I would think Hashem also has an angel for fire, and an angel for water, an angel for war, an angel for this, an angel for that, and they run it independently, but that's Avodah Zarah. So what if I don't believe in angels, but I believe that nature does things independently? That's Avodah Zarah. I believe Hashem created the world. I believe Hashem created nature. I believe Hashem gave nature the power to do what it does, but at the end of the day, things are happening because of nature and they're not related to Hashem. It's just nature. So that is a fine level of Avodah Zarah. Yeah.
People say like the universe. Like I use the term and I do quote unquote like Like when you feel like all the ducks are lining up, like all the things are lining up, you know what I'm saying? Like all the things are lining up, and you feel like the universe knows what you want. Of course, I know that it's God, but that's like the term, universe meaning God. But
Well, why can't we say God? So we could get lost when you use the word universe or nature. You can get lost, and you could forget that there's something beyond that. In fact, the truth is that most of us, even though we're all Chassidim and we study Chassidus all day, we still, if you think of it, we still react to things as if nature was in charge. Otherwise, we wouldn't be upset about things the way we are. It's very simple. I confess, all of us, we're just human. It's part of being human. We still look at the world in natural order. So my first reaction when something happens is, I don't believe it. I could have done this and I should have done that. I should have gone there. And then you have to say to yourself, wait a second, everything's from Hashem. And somehow that doesn't register the same way the first one registered. That means we do naturally associate things with nature, not with Hashem.
your own choices, you shouldn't have said that. Kill the situation, or you should.
I said this many times. When you're talking about choices in Torah mitzvahs, we say there's free choice. But choices, I take the right bus, the wrong bus, on the interview, I do this or I do that, and I get it, I don't get it. All these things are clearly, openly, not free choices. Hashem is leading it. How did I forget to do this? The fact that I forgot was from Hashem. But you get angry at yourself. Why did I forget? What's with me? That anger means I'm forgetting for the moment that it's really from Hashem. Could I say to myself, what should I do next time that I shouldn't forget? Of course, do something next time not to forget. I have to do whatever I can for the future to be better. But to be aggravated about the past to a certain extent is not recognizing that this itself was from Hashem. Okay, so at the end of the day, Hashem is in charge of everything. Let's relax. Good Shabbos, everybody.
We're just teaching another class today?
Today I teach Mashiach Agula to the level 1. That's going to be at 10:30.
Okay. Okay, fine. That's my thing.
I just watched the video 5 times. Wait, did you see my videos? I don't know. I always saw